If you want to change your life, don't wait for the perfect time. Don't wait for the beginning of a new year, a new month, or until you have enough time. Life doesn't wait for you to get everything in order. It responds to what you do, not what you promise. And the first thing that any real transformation requires is a decision. A decisive, non-negotiable decision. Not to do everything in one day, but to start with 1 hour. The smallest unit of time capable of changing direction if you know how to use it right. 1 hour, 60 minutes. The amount of time most people spend scrolling on social media, replying to unimportant messages, or getting lost in thoughts that take them nowhere. But in the hands of someone who's conscious, that hour becomes a turning point. It may be the only space in your day where you regain control. Most people think changing your life is a long journey filled with dramatic shifts and life-altering decisions. But no, most reborn lives don't begin with grand events. They begin quietly with a personal decision to use 1 hour a day as if it determines the rest of your life. Not everyone has an entire day to devote to personal growth, but everyone has an hour. The issue isn't whether you have time or not. The issue is whether you're committed enough to dedicate 1 hour each day to what truly matters. It doesn't matter where you are in life, whether you're struggling, feeling lost, or already successful to some degree. If you repeat 1 right hour consistently, you will move, you will change, you will evolve. An hour doesn't need to be grand. It doesn't need validation, applause, or for you to do something extraordinary, but it needs your full presence. It requires you to put everything else aside, your phone, messages, meaningless conversations, and return to yourself. During that time, you're not just doing one specific task. You're sending a message to your entire belief and nervous system. I am intentional. I don't live reactively. I'm reshaping the person I want to become. The real question isn't whether you have time. The question is, are you willing to redefine the value of 1 hour? Are you ready to stop using it to chase what others expect and start using it to become someone you respect? Are you willing to disconnect from outside noise so you can reconnect with what's missing inside? The difference between someone drifting and someone transforming has never been luck. It's in how they use the first hour of the day. The drifter starts with reaction, checking the phone, scrolling, reading the news. The self-leader starts with direction, sitting still, reflecting, writing, learning, redesigning. That difference doesn't show on day one, but after a month, a year, or a decade, it results in 2 entirely different lives. Most people don't lack ambition. They lack systems. They have inspiration, but no structure. They have dreams, but no practice time. And if you ask them why they haven't started, the most common answer is always, I'm too busy. But that's an illusion rationalized by procrastination. The truth is, 1 hour a day, uninterrupted and undistracted, is enough to rebuild habits, learn a new skill, restore a positive mindset, or even launch a new career. But that only happens if you do it daily, without interruption, without negotiating with comfort. 1 hour, repeated correctly, can become the tool that reshapes your mindset, habits, capabilities, and self-worth. It's the ideal time frame not just to consume information, but to think, synthesize, and transform it into actual behavior. It's the space that helps you reestablish your relationship with yourself, where you're headed, who you're becoming, what's guiding you. And the more regularly you do it, the more your nervous system starts to recognize this is no longer a random hour, it's a sacred hour. The time set aside to rebuild your life from the inside out. Don't underestimate the value of 1 hour just because you've never seen its full power in action. Because transformation doesn't come from doing a lot in one day. It comes from doing the right thing over many days. 1 hour a day is enough to move you from a dreamer to a doer, from a dependent person to a proactive one, from someone who doubts themselves to someone who lays the foundation for lasting confidence. But it all starts with one decision. the decision to protect 1 hour a day like sacred territory, where no one is allowed to interrupt, where nothing trivial is allowed to interfere. There will be days you're tired. There will be moments you want to stop. There will be mornings when it feels like nothing is happening. But it's in those hours when you keep working without immediate results that you're strengthening the foundation for long-term power. And it's in your quiet consistency without spectators that you build what no one can ever take from you, inner strength. 1 hour is all you need to create a turning point. But you have to decide, not wait for inspiration, not wait for motivation, because action doesn't depend on emotion. Action depends on structure. And if you create that structure 1 hour consistently with intention, you're not just changing today, you're building a stronger version of yourself in the future, one that will thank you for not compromising, not delaying, not wasting the most valuable thing you have. Time. One decision, 1 hour, one different life. Nothing more is needed, only that you begin today and repeat it tomorrow. Not the whole day, not the whole week, but the very first hour after you wake up is where your future is quietly being shaped. This is not just an inspirational statement, it's a neurological, behavioral, and psychological fact. The moment you open your eyes, your mind hasn't yet been filled by the outside world, nor pulled into the machinery of responsibilities and reactive behavior. That window is when you can choose one of two things: to begin leading your life or to continue reacting to it as usual. Most people start their day in a passive state. They wake up to an alarm, grab their phone, and scroll through an uncontrollable stream of input, news, messages, social media, programming their brain based on someone else's priorities. And then they wonder why they feel anxious, scattered, and unclear about who or what they're living for. The answer lies right there in those first 60 minutes. The moment they unconsciously surrender control over their most vital energy resource, attention. The first hour of the day is untouched territory. It is sacred mental ground where you can plant meaningful ideas, values, and direction without interference. But only when you realize how valuable it is will you guard it as something non-negotiable. Because if you don't consciously use it to build, the world will quickly hijack it and mold you in ways you never chose. What separates the self-led from the reactive isn't busyness, but how they begin. The reactive start with distraction. The self-led start with direction. The reactive enter the day in a fog. The self-led enter it with clarity. The reactive repeat the same patterns. The self-led design new structures. And that difference, subtle to the point of being invisible, is the seed that eventually grows into massive divergence. The first hour isn't the time to rush into action. It's the moment to return inward and audit your mental operating system. What are you carrying from yesterday? What thoughts are running that don't deserve space in your mind? What worries are taking up residence that should have been evicted? This isn't vague philosophy or spiritual fluff. This is a quality check on the mindset you're about to bring into the rest of your day. If you begin with mental garbage, you'll spend the whole day managing the mess. The truth is you can't control the entire day, but you can control the first hour, and that is enough. If you use the first hour to clarify the values you want to live by, the person you want to become, the mindset you want to develop, then even if the rest of the day becomes chaotic, you'll still move through it with a posture of leadership, not drowning in noise. You can use this hour to read a meaningful chapter. Write down what you believe in. Sketch out sound decisions. Reflect on what you don't want to repeat. In essence, you design your mental blueprint instead of letting your day drift by default. And you don't do it to feel better instantly. You do it to build a mind that's resilient to turbulence. Others may gain higher positions than you. They may start with more advantages. But if you know how to own your first hour, you'll soon build a form of advantage no one can buy. Clarity. In a world where everyone is busy, running, and pulled by the chaos of modern life, the one with clarity becomes the guide, not with noise, but with the quiet power of inner structure. You don't need a perfect morning routine like the books often preach. You only need a minimalist commitment. No one, no notification, no headline is allowed into your life before you've reminded yourself who you are, what you want, and how you intend to live today. 1 hour without noise is more valuable than a full day of scattered productivity. Ask yourself, are you willing to wake up 1 hour earlier to install the mindset of a leader? Do you respect the future you desire enough to protect the first hour as the most important part of your day? Don't measure your morning by how much you did, but by the quality of thought you created. What you think in that hour will quietly dictate how you respond when provoked, what you choose at the crossroads, and whether you stand firm or get swept away by the crowd. Successful people don't have more time than you. They simply understand that the first hour cannot be dropped. It's when the nervous system is untouched, the spirit isn't pulled, and the mind is still blank enough to reprogram itself. What you place into that hour becomes the mental filter you use all day to assess, select, and decide. You can use that hour to learn a core principle, journal a lesson from yesterday, set a new standard for today, or simply breathe and affirm, I'm not a reactive person. I'm intentional. I build my life hour by hour. These small actions, when repeated every morning, become an invisible force others feel in you. Steadiness, clarity, quiet confidence that doesn't need to be broadcast. The future doesn't begin on some special occasion. It begins on a very ordinary morning where you reject old habits and choose to rebuild yourself from the very first hour. No one needs to witness it. It doesn't have to be shared on social media. It doesn't need to be turned into a grand plan. You just need to sit down, be still, be present, and be honest with yourself. If you do this long enough, you won't just see yourself change. The world around you will begin to respond differently because you've started living differently. And it all begins with the first hour, the hour where you have full control to choose whether it will be a repetitive blur or the moment that defines a whole new future. Every action begins with a thought. Every decision is the product of an underlying value system. And every outcome, whether success or failure, has its roots in how you see the world and how you see yourself. That's why people without a personal philosophy are always pulled by someone else's. They say things that sound right, do what others are doing, and live on autopilot without ever realizing they're walking a path that was never theirs. A personal philosophy is not a slogan on your wall, nor a few easy inspirational quotes. It is the invisible mental filter you carry into every decision. It's the foundational thought structure that shapes your habits. It's the internal value system that governs your emotional responses to life. And the most important truth is, you are building it, whether you're aware of it or not. The only difference between the guide and the lost is this. The first builds their philosophy intentionally. The second lets it form out of chaos. A life philosophy isn't built through promises, but through deliberate repetition. Every book you choose to read, every voice you choose to listen to, every idea you allow yourself to believe in, each becomes a brick in your mental architecture. No one accidentally becomes someone with depth. No one randomly gains clarity. It all begins with daily choices. What are you allowing to define you? If you don't choose, the world will choose for you. Hollow words, shallow values, false standards. These will creep into your nervous system if you don't establish a strong enough inner framework. And when you live without your own philosophy, you're easily swayed by any loud opinion. You stop making decisions, you just react. You stop living by standards, you follow trends. And the saddest part is, you don't even realize what's shaping you. A personal philosophy doesn't need to be grand. It doesn't have to be deep philosophy or a complex doctrine. It just needs to be true to you, real for you, and strong enough to keep you grounded in chaos. It could be something as simple as never say what I don't believe, or choose what's right over what feels easy. But when you repeat those principles long enough, they stop being ideas. They become the core of how you live. The world is noisy. You can't control everything that happens, but you can control how you respond if you have a philosophy to guide you. Without one, you handle life through emotion. With one, you respond through principle. And the distance between the two is the distance between being unpredictable and being dependable. A philosophy doesn't come from copying others. It comes from reflection, trial, failure, and refining what you've seen work in your own life, not because someone told you it's right, but because you've lived it. And the most empowering thing is you can start building it at any time. No one has to give you permission. No one can hand it to you. It's a structure only you can build and only you can destroy. Don't wait for life to force you to think. Start thinking before pain wakes you up. Curate your thoughts like you're selecting the materials to build a house. Every belief you hold, every thought you repeat is constructing a framework. That framework will either be a shelter in the storm or a trap that keeps you stuck in frustration and reactivity. You can't live by someone else's philosophy and expect to have a life that's truly yours. What they believe, what they do, what they choose, it fits their path, not yours. You need to ask, what feels true for me? Do I really believe this, or am I just repeating something familiar? Am I making this choice consciously, or am I afraid of being left behind? Those questions, when asked daily, begin to separate what you truly believe from what you've been pressured to accept. No one is born with a strong life philosophy, but everyone can forge one from the things they choose to think about every day. You can't control your entire environment, but you can control what enters your mind. Start by limiting empty content, avoiding cheap information, and choosing to read what forces you to stop and reflect. Every time you pause to think, you're forging a layer of mental armor, and that armor will protect you when the world begins to shake. You won't build a personal philosophy just by listening to a few speeches or reading a few quotes. You have to sit with yourself. Write down what you believe, question those beliefs, and keep only what holds true value. Don't cling to a belief just because you've had it for too long. Don't abandon a principle just because others say it's outdated. Your philosophy is not meant to please others. It's the foundation that lets you live with quiet integrity, even when no one is watching. If you begin each day by auditing your thoughts, you're doing what most people never do, and that's what sets you apart. While others chase speed, you return to depth. While others get pulled into reaction, you pause to reflect. While others scramble for the next move, you already know your direction because you've defined it. Who I am, what I live for, and what I refuse to tolerate. No one needs to teach you how to build a philosophy. You just need to think more intentionally about what you allow to live in your mind. And if you spend 1 hour each day doing that, repeating, reflecting, refining, soon you'll have a foundation no storm can break. A clear personal philosophy gives you steadiness in chaos, decisiveness in confusion, and peace in the midst of the world's noise. Your future is not shaped by the opportunities that come your way. It's shaped by how you respond when opportunity hasn't yet arrived. And what shapes your response is the philosophy you carry within. So don't let it form by accident. Start building it through the thoughts you choose to think today. It's not intelligence, processing speed, or eloquence that separates a sharp mind from a chaotic one. It's the degree of inner stillness. Clear thinking doesn't arise in noise. It can't be activated in the middle of rapid conversations, constant notifications, or a schedule packed so tightly there's no room to breathe. Clear thinking only emerges when the mind is brought back to stillness. And stillness, in this sense, isn't passive. It's a deliberate act of disconnecting from what's unnecessary to return to what matters most, inner direction. Stillness isn't a reward for the busy. It's the foundation from which all real growth begins. You can't see the path ahead clearly if your mind is fogged by continuous distractions. No strategy matters if you're not quiet enough to identify what's truly important. The fastest runner doesn't win if they're sprinting in the wrong direction. And only in stillness do you create the space to check your direction, rather than charging ahead just to feel like you're doing something. Clear thinking is a consequence, not something you can command into existence. You can't think clearly when your mind is chaotic, but you can create the conditions for clarity to emerge by clearing out distractions, sitting down, turning off the external noise, and allowing your thoughts to settle. Stillness doesn't mean not thinking at all. It's the state where you end the dialogue with distraction and begin a conversation with the deepest part of yourself. In a world where noise is the new normal, the one who dares to enter stillness is truly courageous. Because when you stop listening to the outside, you begin to hear the inside. And what you hear first often isn't pleasant. Unresolved tensions, conflicting beliefs, emotions you've avoided, decisions you've postponed. But that's exactly where clarity begins. Like a lake, you only see the bottom when the water is calm. The mind is the same. You only see what's true when your inner world is still. Stillness helps you distinguish between what you think you want and what you truly need. It reveals the difference between real dreams and external pressures. It uncovers the assumptions you've been living under, the ones you treat as truth even when they aren't. Above all, stillness restores your autonomy, the ability to redefine what matters, what deserves your energy, and what must be released. A person who lives without clarity is someone who lives without stillness. They're pulled from one situation to the next, from one obligation to another, never making enough space to ask themselves anything meaningful. They make decisions in a fog. They exist in a state of being busy without knowing why. And the danger is they grow used to it, assuming it's normal. But what's normal isn't always what's right. And unless you're awake enough to pause, you'll continue down the wrong path without ever realizing it. Stillness is not some far-off state. It's a choice. 1 hour without your phone, 1 hour without social media, 1 hour listening to no one but yourself. Put your pen to paper and write out the thoughts weighing you down. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be correct. It just has to be real. Write to see clearly. Write to hear your own inner voice. And as things begin to quiet, you'll notice something strange. The answers you've been searching for were never far away. They've always been there. You just weren't still enough to hear them. In stillness, you can restructure your thoughts. What's stealing your attention but giving you nothing in return? Who's unconsciously influencing your emotions? Each day, are you spending mental energy on what truly matters or just on what's familiar? Stillness helps you realize most exhaustion doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from not being clear about what's not worth doing at all. Clear thinking doesn't come from speed, it comes from depth, and depth requires space. Don't be afraid of silence. Don't rush to fill every gap with human voices, screens, or content, because sometimes it's in that silence where your mind is being reprogrammed. It's where your inner systems begin reprioritizing. It's where you stop chasing a to-do list and start deciding what's truly worth doing. If you spend just 1 hour each day in stillness, without interruption, without trying to produce results, without needing to be efficient, you'll soon notice something profound. You think better. You choose better. You react slower but more accurately. You no longer get swept into news cycles, emotional currents, or comparisons. You move at your own rhythm, not because you're avoiding the world, but because you've reclaimed your inner command center. The world won't slow down for you to think, but you can slow yourself down to recalibrate while everything else races on. Clear thinking isn't a talent, it's a reward for those who create space to think. Don't measure the value of an hour of stillness by what you accomplish in that hour. Measure it by the sharpness you bring into the next 23. There is nothing more powerful than someone who can keep their mind sharp in a noisy world, because they don't just survive, they lead, they guide, they create, and it all begins with one simple act. the courage to enter stillness, not to escape, but to listen, not to run, but to reconnect, not to be silent, but to give real thought a chance to speak. You cannot create a different life if you keep thinking the same way. And you can't think differently unless you give yourself the chance to be still. So if you want to change direction, live with focus, strength, and clarity. Start where most people refuse to go, stillness. That's where everything clear begins. And from there, every action starts to carry real weight. Not everything you absorb each day deserves a place in your mind. But if you're not careful, it will still pour in, without knocking, without asking. The world doesn't wait to see if you're ready to receive. It floods you with thousands of fragments every hour, sensational headlines, meaningless updates, emotionally charged opinions, and images engineered to exploit your cognitive blind spot. And if you don't learn how to consciously select your inputs, you will unintentionally become the product of things you never actually chose. Your mind is like a door that's always open. If you don't place a gatekeeper there, a conscious filtering system, then anything passing by can enter, leave an imprint, and shape your thinking bit by bit. You might think you're just checking things out, listening for fun, or scrolling for a bit, but in truth, you're allowing the world to drip feed your brain with dangerous microdoses, unconscious comparison, vague anxiety, a sense of lack, self-doubt, and worst of all, false beliefs repeated just often enough to become habitual thinking. Why do you feel drained, even when you haven't done much? Why are you distracted when no one's interrupting you? Why is it hard to focus when you only have one task to do? Look at the quality of the inputs you're absorbing daily. This isn't a time issue. It's a cognitive energy issue, being wasted on input that holds no real value. And more concerning is the fact that you've grown so used to it, you no longer realize you're being programmed by it. Those who don't choose their inputs will live under pressure without understanding why. They feel inadequate but can't pinpoint the source. They sense a lack of time, opportunity, and direction, but what they're really missing is something more essential, mental clarity. And that only comes when you're awake enough to guard the borders of your mind, allowing in only what truly holds value. You can't escape the noise, but you can decide what's worth listening to. You can't stop the world from speaking, but you have every right to choose what stays inside you. Don't consume something just because it showed up in front of you. Don't follow someone's words simply because they sound convincing. Don't let algorithms decide what content you see, and by extension, how you think, feel, and behave. Because if you don't control what gets in, eventually you'll lose the ability to control yourself. Input isn't just information. It's emotion, energy, the conversations you join, the relationships you maintain, the sounds you hear each morning, the tone of voice you allow in your inner dialogue. Every bit of it, no matter how small, is shaping the mental version of you that you carry throughout the day. And if you don't choose these elements consciously, you'll live as a diluted version of yourself, shaped by the world, unclear where you end and external influence begins. One of the most practical and urgent ways to elevate your life is to optimize your inputs, not by reading more, but by reading better. Not by listening to podcasts daily, but by listening to things that deepen you, not just excite you. Not by watching more inspirational videos, but by choosing content that makes you think longer, reflect deeper, and act slower, but more precisely. You want a strong mindset, yet you allow your inputs to be hijacked by others' emotions. You want to live with intention, yet you start your morning with information irrelevant to your goals. You want inner strength, yet you consume content that makes you compare, doubt, and drain yourself. There is no magical formula for clarity. There is only one question that matters. What are you letting in every day? People who live with clarity have strong mental boundaries. They don't let every voice in. They don't allow trivial fragments to eat up their attention. They guard their mind like a disciplined gardener, planting only what's good, pulling out the weeds early. And that's what allows them to stay clear even when everything around them is in chaos. No one is forcing you to read every day, but if you don't choose a good book, there are hundreds of trash inputs ready to take its place. No one demands you join deep conversations, but if you don't create space for me